Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into Harper Lee's classic, To Kill a Mockingbird. I know. Many of you probably read this back in high school.
Oh, absolutely. It's a staple.
But trust me, even if you think you know this story inside and out, we're going to uncover layers and themes you might have missed. Get ready for some aha moments.
I love that. And it's true, this book has such depth. It's not just a simple story.
Right. It's so much more than just a coming-of-age tale, even though we definitely see Scout Finch growing up throughout the book.
Exactly. There's this element of Southern Gothic that runs through it, you know? Those shadowy secrets and that whole atmosphere of small-town life in the American South.
It's so evocative. You can practically feel the humidity of those summer nights in Macomb, Alabama.
And the way Lee writes, you really feel like you're right there alongside Scout, seeing the world through her eyes.
And that's one of the things that makes the novel so powerful, right? We start out with this innocent, curious little girl, but as the story unfolds...
she becomes so much more aware of the world around her, and not just the good stuff.
Definitely. It's like her childhood innocence slams right into the reality of racial prejudice.
Exactly, and Lee doesn't shy away from that. The novel tackles the deeply rooted racism of the Jim Crow South head on.
It's heavy stuff.
It is. But it's important. And actually, the Tom Robinson trial, the central conflict in the novel, it really reflects actual historical cases from that era.
It makes you think about how widespread these injustices were. It wasn't just fiction, it was people's lives.
Exactly. And it wasn't just happening in some far-off place. This was America.
It makes you wonder, were there any real-life Atticus Finches out there?
Yeah.
You know, people brave enough to stand up against that kind of hate.
That's a question worth considering. And it speaks to the complexity of Lee's characters. They're not just good or bad, they're real people wrestling with moral dilemmas.
That's what makes them so relatable, even today.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things Lee does really cleverly is structure the novel in two distinct parts.
Oh yeah, that two-part structure definitely builds tension.
In part one, we're immersed in Scout's childhood adventures, meeting all the quirky folks in Macomb.
Right. It's lighthearted, but there are these hints of prejudice bubbling beneath the surface. It's like Lee is setting the stage.
Exactly. And then in part two, bam, the Tom Robinson trial hits and everything changes.
The tone shifts dramatically. We go from those carefree childhood days to this stark confrontation with injustice.
The tension just explodes and everything that was simmering beneath the surface in part one comes out into the open.
It's like Lee's saying, okay, you've met these people, you've seen their world, now get ready for the real story.
And she pulls no punches.
Not at all. The trial forces us, as readers, and Scout, to confront some really uncomfortable truths about prejudice and how the justice system can fail people.
It's powerful stuff.
And it really makes you think about how Lee uses this fictional trial to reveal the larger truth about what was happening in America during the 1930s. What do you think she was hoping to accomplish with that?
I think she wanted to make people see themselves, you know? To really confront the racism that was so ingrained in society back then. It wasn't just a story, it was a statement.
And she does it so skillfully, weaving those tough issues into a story that just grabs you emotionally. We're not just reading about abstract concepts, right? We're feeling the impact of prejudice on real people.
Exactly. And that brings us to the characters themselves. They're what make this story come alive. We've got Scout, of course, our guide through this whole world.
We see everything through her eyes, experiencing her childhood wonder, but also her growing awareness of the world's injustices. She starts out with such a simple view of good and bad, but that trial really shakes things up for her.
Yeah, it's like watching her whole moral compass get recalibrated. The things she sees and hears during that trial, they force her to question everything.
It's a powerful journey of growth. And it's not just Scout who changes. Jam, her brother, he goes through a transformation too, but it's more about disillusionment, right?
Oh, absolutely. He starts out so idealistic, believing in the justice system, but that verdict, it just shatters him. It forces him to face the reality that justice isn't always fair, especially when racial prejudice is involved.
It's heartbreaking to watch that innocence slip away. He wrestles with it in a way that Scout, at her age, can't quite grasp yet.
It shows how differently people cope with trauma and injustice. And then there's Atticus, the moral center of the story. He's often seen as this symbol of unwavering justice, standing strong even when the whole town turns against him.
He's the kind of person we all hope we would be in that situation, right? Someone with the courage to fight for what's right, no matter the cost. But I've heard some modern readers criticize Atticus, saying he's too passive.
That's an interesting point. He defends Tom Robinson in court, but he doesn't really challenge the racist system that put Tom in that position in the first place. So it raises the question, what does true allyship really mean?
Is it enough to just work within a broken system, or do we have a responsibility to try to change the system itself?
It's a question that's still so relevant today. It makes you wonder how Atticus, with his strong belief in the law, would have responded to the civil rights movement that came later.
Definitely something to think about. And, speaking of challenging assumptions, we can't forget about Boo Radley, that mysterious figure who looms so large in the children's imaginations.
He starts off as this figure of fear and fascination. The kids are convinced he's a monster lurking in the shadows. They believe all the rumors and gossip about him.
But as the story progresses, we see a different side of Boo. The gifts he leaves for the children, mending Gem's pants, and ultimately saving their lives. He becomes a symbol of the importance of looking beyond appearances, challenging our preconceived notions.
It's that classic, don't judge a book by its cover lesson. And it's through Boo that Scout learns one of the most important lessons of the novel, to walk in someone else's shoes and try to see the world from their perspective.
That scene where Scout walks Boo home and sees the world through his eyes, it's so powerful. A real moment of empathy and understanding.
It is. Speaking of powerful moments, the plot is full of these pivotal scenes that really drive home the novel's themes.
Oh, for sure. From the kids' fascination with Boo Radley to the tension building up to the trial and then that devastating verdict, each event serves a purpose.
It's like each scene is a piece of a puzzle, and when they all come together, you get this complete picture of prejudice, courage, and compassion.
And Lee's language is just as masterful. Those words, they just stick with you.
Absolutely. There are so many memorable lines. One that I always think about is, you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it.
It's the perfect summation of the novel's message about empathy, urging us to step outside of our own limited perspective.
He's powerful.
Another one that resonates with me is, the one thing that doesn't abide by majority rule is a person's conscience.
Yes. Atticus reminding us that we have a responsibility to follow our own moral compass, even when it means going against the crowd.
It's a reminder that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's always necessary. Those quotes highlight how To Kill a Mockingbird is more than just a story. It's a guide for navigating life's complexities and fighting for what we believe in. They make you reflect on your own life and the choices you make. Have you ever faced a situation that challenged your own sense of right and wrong, similar to what Scout goes through?
It's hard to choose just one. So many of them resonate. But I think you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. That one really gets to the heart of it, that idea of empathy.
Yeah, it's a powerful message about the need to understand each other, even when it's hard. And that brings us to the bigger question. Why does To Kill a Mockingbird still matter today? I mean, it was published over 60 years ago.
It's because the themes Lee tackles are so timeless. Racial injustice, prejudice, moral courage. These issues are sadly still relevant today.
I think that's why it continues to resonate with readers of all ages.
It's like Lee gives us this framework for understanding these complex issues. We see how prejudice can distort the way we see things, how fear can lead to injustice, and how even small acts of courage can make a difference.
Right. It reminds us that progress isn't always straightforward, and we constantly have to work at being better, challenging our own biases, and speaking out against what's wrong.
Absolutely. It makes you think about your own life. How can you apply those lessons to the world around you?
Exactly. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your own sense of right and wrong was tested? Something like what Scout experiences.
Oh, definitely. I think we've all seen prejudice or injustice at some point and had to decide how to react. And Lee's novel, it really encourages us to find our own voices, to speak up for what we believe in.
That's so powerful. So as we wrap up this deep dive into To Kill a Mockingbird, what would you say is the most important lesson Harper Lee wanted readers to take away?
That's a question every reader has to answer for themselves. But I think for me, it's about choosing empathy, recognizing that everyone has a story. We have to challenge those knee-jerk assumptions and really try to see the world from other people's perspectives. That's the only way we can start breaking down prejudice and building a more just and compassionate world.
It's a powerful call to action, a reminder that we can all choose to be better, kinder, more understanding. And what better message is there than that? If you haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird in a while, or maybe never read it at all, I encourage you to check it out. Let it challenge you, inspire you, and remind you of the power of empathy and understanding.
As you navigate your own world, remember the lessons of Maycomb. Remember the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into To Kill a Mockingbird. Until next time, keep those pages turning and keep exploring.